Right now, while you rinse the rice for tonight's supper, you are pouring something down the drain that a garden center would happily bottle, slap a label on, and sell back to you for $15. That cloudy water swirling toward the sink trap is not waste. Handled the right way, it becomes one of the most powerful living fertilizers you can make, and it costs you nothing but 3 days of patience. Here is the part that ought to make you a little angry. Gardeners across this country spend billions of dollars every year on bagged amendments, bottled boosters, and microbe inoculants. And the plain truth is that the most important workers in your soil were never for sale to begin with. They are microscopic, they multiply for free, and most of us have spent a lifetime feeding them straight to the trash can. So set the marketing aside for the next few minutes. Here are 5 things you would normally throw away. 5 living tonics you can make in a jar on your kitchen counter. And 5 very good reasons the people who sell fertilizer would much rather you kept buying theirs. Top 1. Fermented rice water. Start with the one you make almost every day without thinking. That cloudy, milky water left over from rinsing rice is loaded with starches, trace minerals, and a little protein washed off the surface of the grain. It looks like nothing, but it is anything but if you handle it correctly. Here is the trap nearly everyone falls into. They take that fresh, milky water and pour it straight onto the bed, expecting a miracle. What they get instead is a stall. Those raw starches are a feast for the bacteria already living in your soil, and as the bacteria multiply to gobble them up, they grab the available nitrogen out of the ground to fuel themselves for a week or two. Your plants are competing with a bacterial population boom for the very nitrogen they need to stay green. Gardeners call this nitrogen immobilization. It is exactly why so many people try raw rice water once, watch their seedlings turn pale and sulk, and give up, convinced the whole idea is nonsense. The fix is older than any garden center on earth. You ferment it first. Pour the rinse water into a jar, rest a loose lid on top, not sealed tight, and leave it on the counter out of direct sun. Wild lactic acid bacteria, the very same family that turns milk into yogurt and cabbage into sauerkraut, drift in from the air and get to work. They break those heavy starches down into simple organic acids and unlock the locked-up minerals into a form your roots can drink straight away. Watch the jar, and you can follow the whole transformation with your own senses. On day 1, it is just cloudy water sitting there. By the 3rd day, it gives off a faint sour tang, a little bready, a little like a sourdough starter. That smell is your signal that the bacteria have done the job. Researchers at University Putra Malaysia measured this very process and found the 3-day mark is the sweet spot. That is precisely when nitrogen fixing, phosphorus and potassium release, and the production of natural plant growth hormones all peak together. As the water fermented, some of its nutrients climb by anywhere from roughly 4% to well over 200% compared to the fresh rinse. Picture that for a moment, the same water you would have sent down the drain, sitting quietly on your countertop, turning into something genuinely, measurably different. In their field trials, that fermented rice water did something that ought to give the whole fertilizer aisle pause. Paired with only a half dose of conventional fertilizer, it kept right up with the plots that received a full chemical ration. And it did so while protecting the living bacteria in the soil instead of beating them down the way a heavy dose of synthetic salt tends to. Now, your backyard is not a research plot, so treat that as the encouraging headline. It is rather than a guarantee, but the direction is unmistakable. This free jar of water pulls real weight. Using it is simple. Once your ferment smells pleasantly sour, dilute it, about 1 part rice water to 4 parts plain water, and pour it at the base of your plants every couple of weeks. Do not use it full strength and go easy around the most tender seedlings until they have some size to them. That is the entire method. And notice this, there is no patent on a jar of rice water. No company on earth can stamp its logo on the rinse from your own sink. That is the whole reason you have heard so much about bottled beneficial bacteria and almost nothing about the free version sitting by your stove. Top 2, charged biochar. If rice water feeds the microbes, the next leftover builds them a permanent home that can last for decades, and most folks ruin it on the very first step. Deep in the Amazon basin, there are patches of soil so dark, so deep, and so rich that they have stayed fertile for thousands of years. And that is in a part of the world where the rains normally strip ordinary soil bare within a single season. The native peoples who lived there made this earth on purpose. Today, soil scientists call it terra preta, which simply means black earth. The secret ingredient at the heart of it is charcoal. A German soil chemist named Bruno Glaser spent years studying these soils and helped pin down what makes them work. Charcoal worked into the ground does not break down and wash away the way compost does. It stays put for centuries, holding on to nutrients and giving billions of microbes a place to live long after everything else has leached out. That is the lesson buried in that black earth, and you can borrow it for your own beds this season. But here is where eager gardeners go wrong, and it is worth saying plainly so you do not waste a dime. Do not grab a bag of charcoal briquettes off the barbecue shelf and crush them into your soil. Those are packed with binders, fillers, and lighter fluid residues you do not want anywhere near food you intend to eat. And skip the pricey activated carbon sold for fish tanks and water filters too. It is so aggressive at grabbing molecules that it can actually pull nutrients away from your plants. What you are after is real biochar, wood or plant matter burned hot with very little oxygen, the slow way a charcoal maker has done it for centuries. And here is the step that never makes it onto the bag. Fresh biochar straight from the burn is empty. It is all structure and no cargo, a vast honeycomb of microscopic pores with absolutely nothing in them yet. Put it into your garden raw, and that sponge-like structure does exactly what a dry sponge does when you set it in a puddle. It soaks up the surrounding water and nutrients, nitrogen included, and holds them away from your roots for the whole first season. That is precisely why the folks who skip this step come away swearing biochar burned their plants. The biochar did not fail them. They simply forgot to load it. You have to charge it first. Soak that biochar in something nutrient-rich. The fermented rice water from a moment ago works beautifully, as does compost tea, diluted urine, or simply burying it inside an active compost pile and let it sit for 2 to 4 weeks. The pores fill up with nutrients, and the inner surfaces colonize with microbes. Now, and only now, is it loaded and ready. One important thing to know going in, because this is where a lot of bad advice circulates, biochar is not acidic. It runs the other way. Most biochar lands somewhere between pH 7 and 10, which is firmly alkaline. That means charged biochar behaves like a gentle, slow-release liming agent. If your soil is sour and acidic, working it in nudges the ground back up toward the near-neutral range where most vegetables actually want to live, somewhere around 6 to 7 on the scale. So it is a wonderful fix for tired, acidic ground. But if your soil already runs alkaline, go light because you can absolutely push it too far in the other direction. Know your dirt before you load it up. Think of charged biochar as a fully furnished apartment building for the life in your soil. Raw biochar is the empty shell, handsome but lifeless until the tenants move in. Charge it, and you have handed billions of beneficial microbes a permanent address with a stocked pantry. Once it is worked into your ground, a single batch can keep paying you back for 20, 30, even 40 years. A bag of premium inoculated biochar at the garden store will run you $30 or $40 for a few pounds. A bucket of homemade charcoal soaked in compost tea costs you an afternoon and the price of nothing. Top 3. The truth about milk. Speaking of things sold as miracles, the next one is the most famous miracle cure in all of backyard gardening. It is also mostly a myth, and I want to walk you straight to the source so you can see why. You have almost certainly seen it shared 100 times over. Spray milk on your garden and watch it explode with growth. The story even comes with a hard number attached, a 26% jump in yield. It sounds wholesome, old-fashioned, folksy, and too good to keep quiet about. So let us actually follow it back to where it started, because the true story is far more useful to you than the myth. Around the turn of the 2000s, a Nebraska dairyman named David Wetzel began spraying his surplus skim milk across his pastures. His grass came in greener, his soil felt looser underfoot, and the word spread fast. Wetzel, along with a local extension educator, reported that just a few gallons of milk per acre had boosted his grass yields by that now famous 26%. It was a striking enough claim that the University of Nebraska decided to put it to a proper test. A soil scientist there named Charles Shapiro ran a careful, replicated, statistically controlled trial. The real thing, not a hunch. And here is the part the internet always quietly leaves out. There was no statistical evidence that the milk made any reliable difference at all. Not in yield, not in nutrient levels, not in soil compaction. The little bumps that looked so impressive in the field fell completely inside the range of ordinary plot-to-plot variation. The same kind of random difference you would see between two patches of lawn for no reason whatsoever. A separate look by a forage specialist at the University of Vermont, Sid Bosworth, landed in the very same place. Milk was neither a reliable nor an economical way to feed a field. And here is what the feel-good version never bothers to warn you about. Milk is one of the most oxygen-hungry substances you can introduce into the environment. It carries an enormous biological oxygen demand. As it rots, the bacteria breaking it down pull dissolved oxygen out of everything around them. The figure water specialists pass around is sobering. A single pint of spilled milk can strip the oxygen from 1,600 gallons of water. Pour raw milk onto the ground and let it run off into a creek or a pond, and you can genuinely suffocate the life in it. Spray it thick across the soil surface, and it can dry into a sour, fatty crust that seals your bed off from air, turns it stagnant, makes it reek, and rings the dinner bell for every fly and scavenger in the neighborhood. Strip away the romance, and milk is 90% water. The actual nutrients in it are real but modest, and you can get every last one of them, plus far more living organic matter from a single handful of homemade compost with none of the stink and none of the risk. The miracle was never really in the milk. It was in the soil life that the milk briefly fed, and compost feeds that same soil life better, cheaper, and for far longer. The people most eager to sell you a dream, you will notice, are rarely the ones who bothered to test it. So pour the milk on your cereal, not your tomatoes. Top 4, baker's yeast. Do not walk away from the dairy aisle entirely empty-handed, because there is one humble, single-celled fungus hiding in your cupboard that genuinely earns a spot in your watering can. That little packet of baker's yeast in your cupboard is not just for bread. Drop the very same single-celled fungus into your soil, and it goes to work like a miniature growth factory. Once you see what it actually does, the packet stops looking like a baking ingredient and starts looking like a tool. Plant scientists have found that many yeasts, common bread yeast among them, actually produce and release plant growth hormones, auxins, gibberellins, and cytokinins. Those are the very same chemical messengers a plant uses to tell its own roots to stretch deeper, branch wider, and thicken up. Feed yeast into the root zone, and you are essentially handing your plants an extra dose of growth signals. But it does more than that. Yeast releases mild organic acids that pry locked up phosphorus out of the soil and into a form roots can finally use. And it produces special iron-gathering compounds that round up the scarce iron in your soil and deliver it where plants can take it in, which, as a quiet bonus, leaves less of that iron available to the fungi that cause root rot and disease. Now the warning, because the popular internet recipe will land you in real trouble. Nearly every viral version tells you to stir yeast into warm water with a big scoop of sugar and pour the whole thing straight onto your soil. Yes, the sugar makes the yeast multiply like mad, but it also turns your garden bed into an open candy dish. As that sugar ferments, it gives off alcohol, carbon dioxide, and a yeasty, beery aroma. To a fruit fly or a sugar ant, that smell is a dinner bell ringing clear across the yard. Pour sugary yeast water onto your beds, and you are not fertilizing anything. You are hosting a pest convention, and you sent the invitations yourself. The smarter way is to let the yeast do its multiplying in a sealed jar or bottle first. Stretch a balloon over the neck or fit a loose airlock so the gas can escape without inviting any guests. Within a day, the mixture is foaming and visibly alive. Give it another day or two in the closed container, then, and this is the key, dilute it down to a pale, weak solution before it ever touches the ground. You keep every bit of the hormone benefit and skip the fruit fly circus entirely. A pinch of yeast handled this way, once every few weeks, is plenty for a whole bed. A jar of biostimulant root hormone concentrate at the garden store can cost more than your entire grocery run. A strip of baker's yeast costs pocket change and does much of the same honest work, which is exactly why you will never once see it marketed as a garden product. There is no money in telling you to walk to your own pantry. Top 5 kitchen scraps and oats. One leftover left to go, and it is the one sitting in your compost bucket right now. Here is a law of gardening that is 180 years old and still dead accurate. A German scientist named Justus von Liebig worked out that a plant's growth is not set by how much food it has in total. It is held back by whichever single nutrient happens to be in shortest supply. They call it the law of the minimum. You can flood a plant with nitrogen and water all you like. If it is starving for potassium, it simply will not perform. And that is exactly where your breakfast scraps come in, because each one is rich in a different missing piece of the puzzle. Start with the banana peel. Bananas grow in potassium-rich ground, and the peel hangs onto a good share of it. Measured properly on a dry weight basis, a banana peel runs somewhere around 9 to 10% potassium, which is genuinely high for a humble kitchen scrap. Now, you may have bumped into a wilder 42% figure floating around online. Let me save you the confusion. That number is a mix-up. 42% is roughly the share of a person's daily potassium you would get from eating a peel. It is a nutrition label number, not the amount of potassium actually in the peel. The honest figure, close to 10% by dry weight, is impressive enough on its own without anyone having to dress it up. And potassium is the nutrient that moves water through a plant, stiffens its stems, and triggers flowering and fruiting. The very difference between a big leafy tomato plant and one that is actually heavy with tomatoes. Potato peels bring a different gift to the table. They are rich in phosphorus, which roots and flowers crave, along with calcium, magnesium, and natural plant compounds that help your crops shrug off stress and disease. But here's the rule that matters. Do not simply bury the raw peels in your bed. Do that, and you drop right back into the same nitrogen stall trap we met with the raw rice water. On top of that, a buried banana peel can sit there whole and undecomposed for the better part of a year. Make a tea instead. Chop your peels and skins, drop them into a jar of water, rest a loose lid on top, and let it steep for a week or two. On day 1, it is just peels and water. By the end of the week, the water has gone dark, soft, and earthy. Strain it out, dilute it about half and half with plain water, and either pour it at the roots or, for a fast potassium pick-me-up, mist it lightly onto the leaves where the plant can take it in almost at once. And one last scrap, because it catches everybody off guard. Plain oats. Out in Olmsted County, Minnesota, the drinking water sits over fractured limestone, and for years, farm chemicals had been seeping straight down into people's wells. A soil conservationist there named Martin Larson helped launch a county program built around an unlikely hero, the oat. He describes oat roots as so fine and so densely branched that they work like the fine mesh of a window screen, where a corn or bean root is more like the wide gaps of a fishing net. Those screen-fine roots catch escaping nitrates so efficiently that, as he tells it, the oats pull the nitrate levels in that groundwater down toward nearly nothing. In your own backyard, you will not be scrubbing the groundwater, of course, but that same lesson scales right down to a single bed. A handful of fibrous rooted oats grown as a cover crop, or even a simple oat water steeped from a scoop of plain oats and poured around your plants, feeds the soil's microbes a gentle dose of carbohydrate and helps build the loose, crumbly, well-structured soil that good roots are always reaching for. Now step back and notice the pattern running through all 5 of these: a banana peel, a potato skin, a handful of oats, a packet of yeast, a jar of cloudy rinse water. There is not one single thing in that list that a company can bottle, barcode, and protect. And that, when you really sit with it, is the quiet reason the garden center shelf groans under plastic jugs, while your own kitchen counter, which holds most of what those jugs are promising, gets no mention at all. The margin is in the bottle. There has never been any margin in your trash. None of this is truly new. It is the same resourcefulness your grandparents practiced without ever giving it a fancy name, using what the kitchen and the yard already handed them and working with the tiny living things in the soil rather than against them. The science only caught up much later to explain why it all worked in the first place. So before you drive to the store this spring, take a good look at what is already in your hands. The cloudy water in the sink, the peels on the cutting board, the little packet in the cupboard. Feed the life in your soil, and it will feed you right back this season and for many seasons after. If these insights have changed the way you look at the scraps in your kitchen, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. We are dedicated to uncovering the deep-rooted history and natural wisdom that modern marketing has tried to bury. Let's Gaeo-trong the future together. Our next exploration into the hidden treasures of the earth will be opening soon.